You think you know the planet you live on, but what if I told you there are places on Earth that defy everything? Physics, geology, biology, and even common sense. Pink lakes that look like they belong to another world. Massive rocks that slide across the desert on their own without anyone touching them. Rivers that boil in the heart of the Amazon rainforest. Waterfalls with flames that never go out. These places are real. You can visit them. And yet, even with all the technology and intelligence humanity has developed, scientists still can't fully explain how they were formed. Welcome to the channel. Today, we're going to travel through 35 natural wonders of the Earth that remain a mystery to science. Some will fill you with wonder, others will give you chills. All of them will make you look at the world through different eyes. The journey starts now. Imagine flying over the wild southern coast of Australia and suddenly seeing this, a perfectly pink lake surrounded by a dense strip of dark green forest and the deep blue of the Indian Ocean. It looks edited, it looks filtered, it looks fake. But Lake Hillier is completely real. Located on Middle Island in the Recherche Archipelago, this lake is about 600 meters long and holds its rosy color all year round, in every season, under any weather condition. Even if you take the water out and pour it into a clear glass, it stays pink. Scientists believe the color comes from a combination of microscopic algae, halophilic bacteria, and an extremely high salt concentration. But here's the mystery. Lakes with similar conditions around the world don't have this color. Not this intense, not this persistent, not this perfect. The exact combination of factors that creates this vibrant pink has never been fully explained. And maybe that's for the best, because there's something magical about knowing that nature still keeps secrets no laboratory has been able to fully crack. In the heart of Death Valley, California, there's a flat, dry, almost lifeless desert. A place so quiet you can hear your own heartbeat. And in the middle of that absolute silence, something impossible happens. Rocks move. Not small rocks. Some weigh more than 300 kilograms. And they glide across the cracked desert floor, leaving long, precise trails, as if someone had pushed them in the night. But no one was there. No camera had ever captured the exact moment of movement for decades on end. For years, geologists, physicists, and curious minds tried to understand the phenomenon. The theories ranged wildly: wind, magnetism, even supernatural intervention. It wasn't until 2014 that researchers finally recorded the movement for the first time. The explanation involves a rare combination of rain, thin ice forming on the surface, and specific wind gusts, creating a kind of natural sliding carpet. It sounds simple, but this combination is so precise, so unlikely, that it remains almost impossible to predict or replicate. Racetrack Playa is a reminder that nature moves at its own pace, and it doesn't ask anyone's permission. In the heart of the Peruvian Amazon, hidden among centuries-old trees and vegetation so dense it barely lets sunlight through, there is a river that shouldn't exist. It boils. That's not a metaphor. That's not an exaggeration. The Shnei Timpishka, which in the native language means exactly that, boiled by the heat of the sun, reaches temperatures of up to 91 degrees Celsius along nearly 6 kilometers of its course. Water hot enough to kill any animal that falls in within minutes. Local communities have known this river for centuries. To them, it is sacred, a force of nature that isn't questioned, only respected. But to science, it is an enormous enigma. Rivers at this temperature normally only exist near active volcanoes or shallow geothermal sources.
The problem is that the nearest active volcano to the Shinei Timpishka is more than 700 kilometers away. Geologist Andres Russo spent years studying the phenomenon and developed theories about deep geological faults that channel heat from Earth's interior up to the surface. It's the most widely accepted explanation to date, but most accepted doesn't mean proven. The boiling river of the Amazon keeps bubbling, steaming, and defying everything we know about geology, as if the Earth wanted to remind us it still has a lot to say.
In the state of New York, inside a nature reserve called Chestnut Ridge Park, there is a small, unassuming waterfall, almost hidden among rocks and vegetation. At first glance, there's nothing extraordinary about it, but if you look a little closer, you'll notice something that shouldn't be there: a flame. Right behind the curtain of water, sheltered by the very flow of the falls, a small orange flame burns continuously. Water and fire, side by side, in a balance that seems to defy the most basic laws of nature. Geologists believe natural gas escapes through cracks in the rocks beneath the waterfall, and that at some point this gas was ignited and never went out. This type of phenomenon has been recorded elsewhere in the world, but it's usually associated with very old and very hot rocks deep underground. The problem is that the rocks at Chestnut Ridge aren't hot enough to generate this kind of gas emission, at least not according to the geological models we know. Researchers from Indiana University studied the phenomenon and published findings that, in practice, only deepened the mystery. The chemical composition of the gas doesn't match what would be expected for that region. The flame, stubborn and silent, keeps burning, as if the Earth simply has no intention of explaining itself.
Antarctica is one of the most inhospitable places on the planet, a continent of ice, silence, and absolute cold, where almost nothing can survive. And it's precisely there that the Earth chose to place one of its most disturbing images. Flowing from the Taylor Glacier in the McMurdo Dry Valleys seeps a liquid of deep red, blood red, trickling slowly down the white ice like an open wound on a frozen body. When it was first discovered in 1911, the explanation seemed straightforward: red algae. But later analyses dismantled that theory. What flows there is extremely salty, iron-rich water that, upon contact with the oxygen in the air, oxidizes instantly, like rust, taking on that unsettling color. But where does this water come from? It has been trapped beneath the glacier for at least 1.5 million years in an underground reservoir completely isolated from the outside world. And inside that reservoir, with no light, no oxygen, and temperatures below zero, scientists discovered something even more remarkable: life. Microbes, living organisms surviving in conditions science once considered incompatible with any form of life. Blood Falls isn't just a visual curiosity. It opened a window to the possibility that life could exist in places we never imagined, including on other planets. In the middle of the Arabian desert, at the Taima Oasis, there is a rock that, to anyone who sees it for the first time, looks impossible. Two enormous sandstone slabs, each balanced on a tiny natural pedestal, almost pointed as if they were floating above the sand. And between them, a division, a vertical cut so precise, so perfectly smooth and straight, it looks like the work of an industrial precision machine. The Al-Naslaa Formation stands about 6 meters tall, and its central split is so exact that there is almost no variation along the entire length of the cut. Of course, the more creative theories didn't take long to appear. Alien lasers, technology from a lost civilization, supernatural intervention. The most accepted scientific explanation speaks of expansion joints, natural fractures that form in rocks when extreme temperature variation occurs over millennia, combined with wind erosion and subtle tectonic movement. But even geologists acknowledge that the precision of this split is unusual, extraordinarily unusual. And as if that weren't enough, the rock still bears ancient petroglyphs thousands of years old. Horses, human figures, animals, as if the ancient peoples who inhabited this region also stopped before it with the same question we have today. What made this? The island of Yonaguni sits at the far western edge of Japan, nearly on the border with Taiwan, a small, windy island surrounded by a deep, crystal-clear ocean. And at the bottom of those waters, about 25 meters down, lies something that has divided the scientific community to this day. A massive structure composed of platforms, steps, ramps, right angles, and perfectly flat surfaces. It looks like a submerged pyramid. It looks like the ruins of a civilization that sank into the ocean millennia ago. The Yonaguni Monument was officially discovered in 1986 by a local diver. Since then, archaeologists and geologists from around the world have dived there and surfaced with completely opposing interpretations. One side argues the structure is man-made, that the right angles, the stepped platforms, and the corridors could not have been formed by nature alone, that it may be evidence of a civilization that lived in this region more than 10,000 years ago, before sea levels rose at the end of the last ice age. The other side maintains it's a natural formation, that the sandstone in the region tends to fracture at right angles, that marine erosion can create surprisingly geometric shapes. The truth is that neither side has been able to definitively prove its theory, and the Yonaguni Monument remains there, on the ocean floor, silent and indifferent to the debate it stirs at the surface. In 1971, a team of Soviet geologists was drilling in the Karakum Desert in Turkmenistan, searching for oil. At some point, the ground gave way. The drilling rig collapsed into a massive underground cavern, opening a crater nearly 70 meters wide. To prevent toxic gases from spreading across the region, the engineers made a decision that seemed reasonable at the time. They set it on fire. The idea was that the gas would burn off in a few days and the problem would be solved. That was in 1971. The crater is still burning. More than 50 years later, the Derwasi, nicknamed by locals the Door to Hell, continues blazing in the middle of the desert, lighting up the night sky with an orange and red glow visible for kilometers around. Inside, hundreds of flames dance across the walls and floor of the crater, creating an image that looks straight out of a science fiction film. The mystery isn't so much the fire itself, but the seemingly inexhaustible supply of gas that has kept the flames fed for decades. Estimates about the region's gas reserves vary widely, and no one knows exactly how much longer the Door to Hell will keep burning. The government of Turkmenistan has announced plans to extinguish the fire, but the Earth, for now, seems to have other plans.
Imagine a storm that never ends. At the mouth of the Catatumbo River, where it meets Lake Maracaibo in western Venezuela, one of the most extraordinary electrical phenomena on the planet takes place. Almost every night of the year, for up to 10 hours at a stretch, the sky is torn open by continuous, silent lightning. Silent because it's so distant that the sound never reaches those watching from the shore. Only the light, pulsing on the horizon like an electric heartbeat. This phenomenon occurs on average 140 to 160 nights a year. At its peak, there can be up to 280 lightning strikes per hour. So intense that Catatumbo has been recognized by Guinness as the place with the highest concentration of atmospheric electrical activity in the entire world. Colonial navigators used this constant glow as a natural lighthouse to guide themselves through the Caribbean. It became known as the Lighthouse of Maracaibo. The scientific explanation involves the unique geography of the region. Warm, humid winds from the Caribbean colliding with cold air descending from the Andes, creating near-permanent conditions for electrical storms. The methane released by the swampy lowlands of the region may also contribute to intensifying the discharges. But even with these theories, the consistency, intensity, and disturbing beauty of the Catatumbo lightning still leaves scientists in awe. It's as if nature chose that corner of the world to put on its own light show and simply never turned it off.
There are places in the world that look as though they were painted by hand, by an artist in a creative frenzy. The Danxia landforms in China's Gansu province are one of those places. Hills and mountains draped in bands of red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple. Colors that shift as the daylight moves, creating a landscape that looks different every hour. At dawn, the rocks glow in shades of gold and coral. At dusk, they turn almost violet. The geological explanation exists, and it's fascinating. Over millions of years, layers of sandstone and minerals were deposited one on top of another, each with a different chemical composition, each producing a different color. Erosion over millennia sculpted these layers into rounded, dramatic shapes. But what scientists still can't fully explain is the precision and intensity of this color palette. Why there? Why with such rich variety? Why are the colors so vivid even after millions of years of exposure to wind and rain? A UNESCO World Heritage Site since 2010, the Danxia landforms draw visitors from around the world. Photographers, geologists, artists, everyday travelers. Everyone leaves with the same feeling, that they were inside a painting. Seen from above, the landscape of the Namib Desert looks like a work of abstract art. Scattered across hundreds of kilometers of terrain, perfect circles appear in the low desert vegetation, round, bare patches with well-defined edges, surrounded by grass. Some are just a few meters in diameter. Others reach more than 30 meters across, and they repeat with an almost mathematical regularity, covering the ground as if someone had used a giant stamp. The Himba, an indigenous people who have inhabited this region for centuries, have an explanation. They are the footprints of the Creator God. An answer that, let's be honest, has a poetry no scientific theory has managed to surpass. And science has tried. Hard. For decades, researchers proposed dozens of theories. Termites building underground colonies and killing the plants above. Plants competing for scarce underground water. Toxic gases released by the soil. Fungi. Radioactivity. In 2022, a study published in the journal Nature suggested that the combination of termite activity and plant competition was the most likely explanation. But other scientists challenged the conclusions. The fairy circles remain there, perfect and enigmatic, defying science to find an answer everyone can agree on. For now, the Himba's explanation is still the most beautiful one.
Few places in the world carry as much imaginative weight as the Bermuda Triangle. The region between Florida, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico became famous for a series of inexplicable disappearances of ships and aircraft throughout the 20th century. Vessels that simply vanished without a trace, aircraft that lost contact and were never found again, entire crews disappearing without leaving a single clue. The theories accumulated over the decades. Anomalous magnetic fields disorienting instruments, methane pockets on the ocean floor reducing water density and causing ships to sink instantly, dimensional portals, underwater alien civilizations. Science, for its part, argues that the number of accidents in the region is not statistically higher than in other areas of heavy maritime and air traffic around the world, that many of the mysterious cases were poorly documented or exaggerated over the years. But there are cases that resist conventional explanations. Flight 19 in 1945, 5 American military aircraft that disappeared during a routine training exercise in favorable weather conditions with no distress signal.
In the northeastern corner of the state of Minnesota, inside Judge C.R. Magny State Park, the Brule River reaches a rocky point and splits into two waterfalls. The first is a common waterfall, beautiful, but common. The water falls, meets the riverbed below, and continues its natural course toward Lake Superior. The second is an entirely different story. The second drop plunges into a circular, cauldron-shaped hole carved into the rock and disappears. The water doesn't go anywhere visible. It doesn't reappear further down the river. It doesn't emerge from any known spring. It simply vanishes. For decades, researchers tried to find out where that water goes. They poured colored dye into the hole. The dye never appeared anywhere. They dropped ping pong balls. They were never found. They used tracking equipment. No results. The volcanic bedrock of the region is dense and complex, full of fissures and underground channels. The most widely accepted theory is that the water percolates through these fractures and eventually emerges at the bottom of Lake Superior, too diluted to be detected. But no one has ever proven it. Devil's Kettle Falls keeps swallowing water, tons of water per minute, and offers no account of what it does with it.
Hidden among the lush vegetation of southern Costa Rica, scattered across farms, forests, and museums, there are hundreds of perfectly round stone spheres. Perfectly. Some are just a few centimeters in diameter. Others reach over 2 meters across and weigh 16 tons. Made of granodiorite, an extremely hard rock, with a sphericity precision that reaches 96% in some of them. No seams, no tool marks, no visible imperfections. They were produced by pre-Columbian peoples who inhabited the region between 600 and 1500 CE, before the arrival of Europeans. But how? With what tools? With what technique? And for what purpose? Archaeologists have theories about the sculpting process: gradual shaping with smaller stones, polishing with sand and water. But replicating a sphere of this size and precision using only the resources of the time is a challenge no modern team has been able to fully replicate. Their meaning is also a mystery. Route markers, status symbols, astronomical representations? No one knows for certain. What is known is that when the first European colonizers arrived in the region and found these spheres, they were so unsettled that many were destroyed in the search for imaginary gold supposedly hidden inside. There was no gold, just stone, just perfection.
Climbing through the sacred valleys of the Peruvian Andes on the way to Machu Picchu, there's a place that from a distance looks like a golden mosaic set into the mountainside. These are the Mara salt mines, more than 3,000 small salt pools carved into the slope of a mountain, cascading one over the other in varying shades of white, beige, ochre, and terracotta, depending on the salt concentration and the stage of evaporation. A hypersaline water spring rises from inside the mountain and is channeled through an incredibly sophisticated irrigation system, distributing the water across all these pools with a precision that defies engineering. What leaves scientists intrigued is the origin of this water. The spring sits deep within the Andes, far from the ocean, far from any known surface salt deposit. How did this water become so extraordinarily salty? Where does this salt come from? What underground geological system has been feeding this spring for centuries? The theories point to salt deposits left behind by inland seas that existed in the region millions of years ago, connected to the surface through geological faults. But perhaps even more remarkable than the geological mystery is the fact that this salt farming system has been operating without interruption for more than 500 years. Andean families manage these pools to this day, in the same way their Inca ancestors did. The mountain provides the salt, the people do the rest. Madagascar is already an island of wonders.
a place where evolution followed its own path for millions of years, producing plants and animals that exist nowhere else on Earth. But even by Madagascar standards, the Tsingy, the Bemaraha, is something completely out of the ordinary. A forest of stone. Hundreds of limestone pillars and needles pointing toward the sky, with edges so sharp they can cut skin with the slightest touch. Some of these formations reach 90 meters in height. Between them, deep abysses, caves, and narrow passages, forming a three-dimensional labyrinth that is almost impenetrable. The name Tsingy comes from the Malagasy language and means roughly where one cannot walk barefoot. An accurate description. The geological formation is the result of millions of years of erosion. Acid rain dissolved the limestone unevenly, creating these pointed needles over the centuries. The process is relatively well understood. What is not fully understood is how life managed to thrive in such a hostile environment. Inside and between the stone needles, there is an entire ecosystem. Lemurs, birds, reptiles, and endemic plants that evolved specifically to live in this impossible labyrinth. Nature found life where no one expected to find it, as always.
At first glance, Lake Natron in northern Tanzania has a hypnotic beauty. Reddish orange-tinted waters reflecting the sky, thousands of pink flamingos, a landscape that looks like it belongs to another planet. But this lake holds a disturbing secret. It petrifies the animals that die inside it. The water of Natron has a pH close to 10.5, nearly as alkaline as pure ammonia, and temperatures that can reach 60 degrees Celsius, a lethal combination for virtually any animal that comes into direct contact. Birds and bats that fall into the lake die quickly, and then the lake's high sodium carbonate content acts as a natural preservative, calcifying the bodies, encasing them in a mineral layer that preserves them in unsettling detail. Photographer Nick Brandt found and photographed these petrified bodies in 2013, birds and bats in perfect position, like statues, and the images shocked the world. The paradox is that this same deadly lake is the largest breeding ground for lesser flamingos on the planet. Flamingos can withstand the extreme conditions thanks to special scales on their legs and their ability to filter the water through their unique bills. Lake Natron kills and gives life at the same time, and does so with an indifference that only nature is capable of.
In 2000, miners drilling underground tunnels in a silver mine in the Chihuahua Desert, Mexico, broke through a passage and found something no human being had ever seen before: a cave full of giant crystals. Giant is not an exaggeration. The largest selenite crystals ever recorded on the planet are there, some over 11 meters long, weighing hundreds of tons. Translucent, a grayish white, rising from the floor, the walls, and the ceiling like the fangs of a sleeping monster. The crystal cave of Naica took between 500,000 and 1 million years to form, fed by underground waters supersaturated with calcium sulfate that bathed the cave at a constant temperature of 58 degrees Celsius. The problem is that this same extreme heat, combined with nearly 100% humidity, makes the cave mortally hostile to human beings. Without special cooling equipment, a person collapses from heat stress within minutes. The few scientists who have managed to explore the cave with proper equipment describe an almost mystical experience. Absolute silence, darkness sliced by reflections from the crystals, the sensation of being somewhere that doesn't belong to the human world. Today, the cave is partially flooded again, following the end of the mine's pumping operations. The crystals keep growing, in peace, in the dark.
Pamukkale means cotton castle in Turkish, and when you see it for the first time, you immediately understand why. Terraces as white as snow, cascading down a hillside, filled with warm turquoise water that spills from one to the next in a slow, hypnotic cascade. From a distance, it looks like snow. It looks like cotton. It looks like a winter landscape. But the sun beats down strong and the water is warm. The phenomenon is geological. Thermal water rich in calcium carbonate rises from underground, and upon contact with the air, the mineral precipitates and forms a white, porous rock called travertine. Over millennia, this continuous deposition created these terraced pools of almost surreal beauty. But what intrigues scientists is the speed and consistency of their formation, and the fact that subtle variations in the chemical composition of the water over time produced shapes and patterns no geological model has been able to fully predict. The Romans already knew the value of this place. They built the city of Hierapolis right beside it, making use of the thermal waters for therapeutic bathing. The ruins of Hierapolis still stand, visible just above the white terraces, a reminder that entire civilizations were captivated by the same beauty. Pamukkale is one of the few wonders of the world that only gets better the closer you get.
If there is a place on Earth that looks like it belongs to another planet, that place is Socotra. Isolated in the Indian Ocean about 240 kilometers off the coast of Yemen, this island was geographically separated from the African continent around 20 million years ago, long enough for life there to evolve in a way completely independent from the rest of the world. The result is an alien flora that takes your breath away. The most famous tree on Socotra is the Dracæna cinnamomum, the dragon blood tree. With its short, thick trunk and a flattened, inverted umbrella-shaped canopy, it looks like it was drawn by a child imagining what a tree on Mars would look like. The red sap that seeps when the trunk is cut gave rise to both the name and the myth. More than a third of the plants on Socotra exist nowhere else on the planet. Some appear preserved from the Jurassic period. The landscape as a whole, with its white rocks, its strange trees, and its sky that always seems a little more dramatic than normal, creates a permanent sense of displacement. Scientists are still studying exactly how this unique biodiversity developed. The combination of geographic isolation, calcareous soil, and monsoon winds created unique conditions, but the full extent of Socotra's singularity continues to surprise even the most experienced botanists. It is the place most similar to another planet that you can visit right here on Earth. There are ancient monuments that time has worn down. And then there is Stonehenge. On the Salisbury Plain in southern England, a circle of giant stones has stood for more than 4,000 years, defying not only time but every attempt at a definitive explanation. The largest stones, the sarsens, weigh up to 25 tons and were transported from a quarry nearly 30 kilometers away by people who had no wheel, no draft animals large enough, and no metal for adequate cutting tools. The smaller stones, the blue stones, came from an even more remarkable distance, the Preseli Hills in Wales, more than 200 kilometers away. How? With what technology? With what degree of social organization? The theories have accumulated over the centuries. Astronomical calendar, temple of sun worship, site of funerary rituals, center of healing. Scholars agree that Stonehenge's alignment with the summer solstice is no coincidence. The stones were deliberately and precisely positioned to capture the light of the rising sun on that specific day. But who built it? Why they built it? And exactly how they built it? Those questions remain without a definitive answer. Stonehenge is proof that the human past is more complex and more extraordinary than we care to admit. In the Sierra Nevada of California, in a region of extinct volcanoes and glacial lakes, there is a rock formation that looks like it came straight out of a geometric dream: basalt columns. Hundreds of them, side by side, hexagonal and perfect, forming a vertical wall more than 20 meters high. So regular, so symmetrical, they looked like the work of an obsessive architect, not of nature. Devil's Postpile, formed about 100,000 years ago, when basaltic lava filled a glacial valley and cooled slowly. As the basalt solidified and contracted, it fractured along precise mathematical patterns, the same principle that creates hexagonal cracks in dry mud, only on a massive scale and in rock. Science explains the mechanism, but the perfection of the result still inspires awe. What makes Devil's Postpile even more extraordinary is that the base of the columns was polished by glaciers that passed over them during the last ice age, creating a surface so smooth it looks like a hand-laid mosaic floor, with the hexagonal patterns clearly visible. It's the kind of place where you stop, look, and need a moment to convince your brain that what you're seeing is real. Nature, when it wants to be, is the finest mathematician in the universe.
New Zealand is already a country of extraordinary landscapes: fjords, volcanoes, beaches, snow-capped mountains. But hidden beneath the surface of the North Island lies something that surpasses all of that in strangeness and beauty: the Waitomo Caves. These are no ordinary caves. They are home to millions of tiny bioluminescent creatures, larvae of a species of fungus gnat called Arachnocampa luminosa, found only in New Zealand and Australia. Each larva produces a blue-green light and hangs threads of silk covered in sticky droplets to trap insects. And when you board a small boat and drift silently along the underground river that winds through the caves, the ceiling above you transforms into a galaxy. Millions of tiny blue dots of light reflected in the dark waters, creating the perfect illusion of a star-filled night sky, but underground. What intrigues scientists is not exactly the mechanism of bioluminescence itself, which is relatively well understood, but the density and concentration of these organisms in the Waitomo Caves, which surpasses any other location where the species has been recorded. Why there? Why so many? What specific combination of humidity, temperature, and food resources created this singular ecosystem? The answers are still being studied, but the experience of floating beneath that sky of living, glowing creatures in the dark is something that changes a person.
Lake Baikal is the world's largest freshwater lake by volume. So vast, it holds approximately 20% of all the surface freshwater on the planet. It is over 1,600 meters deep and more than 25 million years old. But the phenomenon that interests us here is not Baikal's size. It's what appears on its surface during the cold Siberian spring nights. Ice circles. Enormous, perfect, and mysterious. Circular disks that appear on the still frozen surface of the lake, with diameters that can reach several kilometers. Seen from satellite, they look like portals, dark circles in the white ice, with a lighter, well-defined edge around them. They were first recorded in satellite images in 1999. Since then, they have appeared with some frequency, but unpredictably. The most widely accepted scientific explanation involves convection currents, warmer water rising from the lake's depths in a spiral, heating the ice from below and creating these circular patterns on the surface. The shape of the lake basin and the geothermal activity on the floor would contribute to generating these specific spiral currents. It's a plausible theory, but computer models have yet to fully reproduce the exact dimensions and regularity of the circles observed. Baikal is 25 million years old, and it can still surprise us.
There is a place in the heart of South America that looks like the end of the world, or perhaps its beginning. Mount Roraima is a tepui, a flat-topped mountain with vertical walls rising more than 400 meters, like a gigantic block of stone lifted from the jungle by the planet itself. The summit, almost always shrouded in clouds, forms a plateau of about 31 square kilometers, a world apart, suspended above the forest. Roraima is approximately 1.8 billion years old. It is one of the oldest rock formations on the planet, and its extreme isolation across all that geological eternity has produced something extraordinary, an entirely unique ecosystem with species of plants, insects, and amphibians that exist nowhere else on Earth. The summit of Roraima looks like a scene from another world. Black rocks eroded into abstract shapes, pools of tea-colored water, acidic and nearly nutrient-free, constant mist, silence. It's believed this landscape inspired Arthur Conan Doyle to write The Lost World in 1912. The mystery of Roraima is not a single inexplicable phenomenon. It's the sum of everything. How did life find a way on this isolated plateau? How did unique species evolve up there, separated from the rest of the world by sheer impassable walls? What else remains undiscovered on this island in the sky? Roraima is ours, and yet it is entirely unknown.
On the Bolivian Altiplano, at more than 3,600 meters above sea level, lies the world's largest mirror. The Salar de Uyuni is a salt desert spanning more than 10,000 square kilometers, so flat, so white, and so infinite that it defies all sense of distance and scale. In a thin layer of water after the rains, the surface becomes a perfect reflection of the sky. Clouds, mountains, and stars doubled in a mirror that stretches to the horizon. The origin of the Salar is relatively well understood. It is the remnant of prehistoric lakes that dried up over thousands of years, leaving behind a salt crust up to 10 meters thick in some areas. What continues to intrigue scientists is the extraordinary uniformity of the surface. The Salar is so perfectly flat that NASA uses it as a calibration reference for satellite instruments. Any variation in altitude across its entire expanse is less than 1 meter. How did the surface so vast manage to form with this near-impossible geometric precision? Geological models speak of uniform land subsidence and sediment layers that settled in perfectly horizontal sheets beneath the ancient lake waters. But mathematically reproducing this uniformity remains a challenge. And while science tries to explain it, the Salar de Uyuni keeps reflecting the entire universe on its white, silent surface.
Millions of years ago, volcanoes blanketed the center of Anatolia with a thick layer of ash and lava that, as it hardened, formed a porous volcanic rock called tuff. Then, over millennia, wind and rain sculpted this tuff into shapes nature rarely produces: cones, towers, pyramids, and mushroom-shaped rocks with harder stone caps protecting their tops from the most intense erosion. The Turks call these formations fairy chimneys. Cappadocia, in central Turkey, is a labyrinth of thousands of these structures, a landscape that looks computer-generated, too fantastical to be real. But what makes Cappadocia even more extraordinary is what humans did inside these rocks. For more than 2 millennia, different civilizations carved into the soft tuff to create homes, churches, monasteries, and even entire underground cities, some capable of housing tens of thousands of people, complete with ventilation, water wells, and even stables. Derinkuyu, the largest of these underground cities, descends 18 floors below the surface. The geological mystery here is not the mechanism of erosion, that is understood. It's the sheer improbability that nature produced on such a vast scale forms so precise and so varied, as if the wind had sculpted each chimney individually with intent.
On the coast of the island of Capri, in southern Italy, there is an opening in the limestone rock barely visible from the surface of the sea, a narrow gap, almost at water level, that on most days can only be entered lying flat in a small boat, waiting for just the right wave to lift and carry the vessel inside. And then, suddenly, you're there. The Blue Grotto, a cave about 60 meters long and 25 meters wide, where the water glows in an impossible shade of blue, vivid, pulsating, almost electric, as if the cave itself were a source of light. The phenomenon has a physical explanation. Sunlight enters through a submerged opening at the base of the grotto, a second entrance about 2 meters below the surface. This light passes through the water and is refracted in such a way that only blue wavelengths reach the interior of the cave. The result is that blue that seems to come from within the water itself, not from above. What intrigues scientists is how the grotto formed with exactly this shape, this depth, and this submerged opening, creating a refraction angle that maximizes the blue effect throughout nearly the entire day. The Romans already knew about it. Tiberius used it as his private swimming pool. It was rediscovered by the modern world in 1826, and it remains one of the most perfect blues human eyes can see.
Lake Titicaca sits more than 3,800 meters above sea level, on the border between Peru and Bolivia. It is the highest navigable lake in the world, with a surface so vast and an altitude so extreme that the horizon over the water looks curved, as if you were standing at the top of everything. And on this impossible lake, islands float. The Uros Islands are artificial constructions created by the Uros people centuries ago, platforms made entirely of totora, an aquatic plant that grows abundantly along the lake's shores, stacked in layers upon naturally floating roots. The bottom layer rots slowly, and new layers of totora are continuously added on top. The islands need to be renewed constantly to stay afloat. Every resident contributes to this upkeep daily. What intrigues scientists and engineers is the sophistication of this system. The islands have houses, kitchens, schools, and even health clinics, all built from totora, all floating. The anchoring system that keeps the islands in place without preventing natural movement with the waves is of a surprisingly efficient design. This knowledge was developed without any formal scientific instruction, passed from generation to generation, adapted over the centuries. The Uros people didn't merely survive in an extreme environment. They turned that environment into a home.
In Death Valley, California, the same place as the sailing stones we saw at the beginning, there is a crater so dramatic it looks like an open wound on the surface of the planet. Ubehebe Crater is nearly 1 kilometer wide and more than 200 meters deep. Its walls display layers of colored rock, red, orange, black, and beige, like a cross-section of the region's geological history. The explanation for its formation involves a type of volcanic explosion called a phreomagmatic eruption. When superheated magma comes into contact with underground water, the instantly generated steam causes a catastrophic explosion that literally tears a chunk out of the earth. The problem is that geologists cannot agree on exactly when this happened. Some dating methods suggest the explosion occurred around 2,000 years ago. Other analyses suggest it may have been as recently as 300 years ago. And some studies have found evidence of multiple explosions across different periods. The difference is not trivial. 2,000 versus 300 years is an enormous margin for a geological event that left a crater of this size. Ubehebe sits in a valley where the Timbisha Shoshone people have lived for centuries. Their oral records speak of a catastrophic event, fire and shaking, a night that turned into day. Perhaps human memory holds what geology has yet to precisely determine.
In 1911, a devastating earthquake shook the mountains of Kazakhstan, triggering a massive landslide that blocked a mountain river and created a new lake in a forested valley. The trees that stood in the valley were submerged, But the cold, clear mountain waters preserved the trunks, and so was born one of the most surreal and silent places on the planet, Lake Kindy. Fir tree trunks rising from the turquoise water's surface, without branches, without leaves, just the smooth white skeletons of trees, like giant needles piercing the mirror of the lake. Beneath the water, the entire forest remains, branches, roots, limbs, intact, preserved by the cold and the particular chemistry of that mountain water. Divers who explore the depths describe the experience as swimming through a dream, trees all around, absolute silence, a filtered light that gives the environment an ethereal quality, somewhere between the living and the dead. What intrigues scientists is the speed and completeness of the preservation. Under normal conditions, submerged wood would rot within decades. The trees of Kindy are over a century old and remain intact. The specific combination of temperature, pH, and mineral composition of the water created a preservation environment that is almost without precedent. Kindy is a forest that died and that, somehow, keeps existing, a silent reminder that nature does not forget.
"35 places, 35 mysteries. Rocks that walk, lakes that glow, waterfalls that guard flames, forests that sleep on the ocean floor. A planet that, after billions of years, can still leave us speechless." Science has advanced more in recent decades than in all of humanity's previous history combined. And yet, even with satellites, artificial intelligence, electron microscopes, and supercomputers, the Earth continues to hold secrets that no laboratory has been able to fully unlock. Maybe that's a good thing, because a world without mysteries is a world without curiosity, and a world without curiosity stops moving. If this video made you want to explore, to question, to look at the planet you live on through different eyes, then it did exactly what it set out to do. Subscribe to the Alam da Realidad channel to keep this journey going with us. Hit the bell so you don't miss any video, and comment below. What city, what country are you watching from right now? See you at the next destination.